I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. Yet another perfect pod awaits. Scandals with Ben Simmons in Philadelphia. NBA opening day. Succession back. But first, Andrew Quo. How are you, my short king friend?
Wow, so awake and caffeinated, and maybe a little drunk. No, I'm not actually drunk. I'm drunk off excitement for the NBA season. Ben, have you ever had an espresso martini?
I have not. They are apparently all of the rage, which I can confirm firsthand. I was at a local French bistro in the Lower East Side.
Wait, it's Halloween, not Christmas. The hell?
And they were everywhere.
What do you mean by everywhere?
Espresso martinis were, it was like a waterfall
Did they have a
of
tap?
espresso teenies.
It's just like
I
a
don't think they're on tap. I don't think they're actually on tap, but they were everywhere. Every counter, every surface, littered, crowded. You'd put one espresso martini onto a counter, it would knock another one off on the other side. They are everywhere. Are you in on this trend?
I don't like to be awake longer than I have to be. So, no, I don't like to get more awake as I have an beer-style drink. But I see the appeal because the taste of coffee to some is delicious. And, this is a restaurant's dream, right? To caffeinate your customers and to get them to pay for like $17 drinks that cost you like $2 to make, $1.50. This is the best case scenario. This is the best thing since Red Bull.
I mean, is the point of the espresso martini the caffeine, or is it the taste of coffee, or is it how it looks in a martini glass?
So
or
what's
is it
the
just
ratio?
being trendy?
Is the espresso ratio like a vermouth in a normal martini, or are we talking like a strong kick? Is it deep brown or is it tan?
I don't even think it's actually a martini.
Is it just two things mixed together?
Well, I think it's kind of just in a martini glass, but I could be wrong here.
Where does the espresso come in?
Where is this article that our friend Chris Crowley wrote? I'm sure it details what's actually in an espresso martini.
The Lost
because
Tapes,
it
Chris
talks about
Crowley? Right.
one and the same.
I've seen them. They're tan. I was at another Christmas restaurant a few weeks ago, and we were wrapping up our bill. Quick meal. We shared one plate of gnocchi. We had beer, and we were out. And they were like, can we interest you guys in some espresso martinis because we're known for them and they're a speciality. So we recommend you sample at least one. And we're like, no, it's like 8 o'clock. We got to go home.
I mean, the quote from Chris Crowley's Grub Street story, his scoop about the espresso martini that was published 2 weeks ago. Not only does it say they're the must-order drink of 2021, which is this year, this very year. They are, quote, all over the place. They are, quote, everywhere. Espresso martinis, quote, have become the vodka Red Bull of the late 2000s, the Four Loko of the early 2010s. In New York, espresso martinis are the new cocaine.
For someone who saw them everywhere one night, you really don't know much about them, man. What's going on? I just Googled them. They're dark-ass brown.
All right,
It looks like a martini.
Espresso, vodka, coffee liqueur, some kind of sweetener. That's it.
It sounds festive. It sounds like Christmas.
It's a Christmas drink for Christmas restaurants.
Could cinnamon and clove be incorporated? It's Christmas, baby.
Then you're getting into those Scandinavian drinks. The Swedish ones with muddled wine and star anise and clovers. Kind of like the big spicy tray of chicken, but it's in wine instead of beer. And
Yo.
you don't get a spicy big tray of chicken.
What if I just rolled up to Clando to meet you and I was wearing my newly dripped cookies gear, my Hokas, and I rolled up to the bar. I'm
I
like,
respect you.
yo, I'm good for N beer style drink. And I was like, eggnog, sir. Garçon, may I have one eggnog? You'd be like, what? Christmas all year round.
Wow.
It's just incredible energy.
Yeah, what if you were like, 24/7, 365 hot toddy? Like
just like
July,
August?
like
Yeah.
I can't get a fucking hot toddy in this town?
Yo, this toddy's not hot enough. Make it hotter. We want hotter toddies.
So with all due respect to our buddy Jordan Rodelli, the Australians are being blamed for the espresso teeny trend. And I gotta say that kind of checks out. They are the ones who opened up a ton of Williamsburg coffee shops over the last decade.
Why are they to
roots of
blame?
this-
Why aren't they being celebrated?
Okay, credited. Some would say credited with this trend. But I will say they were everywhere. They were everywhere. The last 2 times I've been to a local Christmas restaurant, there are espresso teenies. They are at every table except for my own.
By the looks of them on the internet, it looks like there's a ton of espresso in them. You're getting zooted on those espresso teenies, man. And
It does
in two
seem-
different ways.
It does seem that it's something to wake you up and then it's something to get you fucked up is kind of the general goal of the espresso teeny. I'm trying to think, I've never really been into energy drinks either. I've had my share of Four Locos or Sparks, but that was never really my bag. The
They're
vodka
just-
Red Bull, even when there was that space, remember the Red Bull place? They
Yeah,
would
man.
throw parties all the time, and you'd get like vodka Red Bull, or with every drink was like Red Bull oriented. I can't say I loved that element of it, but there were some good parties there, I guess.
Was Theophilus or your boy Travis Scott performing?
This was definitely pre-Travis, I think.
I mean, shout out to Red Bull. Whatever that drink is and whatever kind of person profiles as their audience, they did good stuff with the zillions of dollars they made off of a simple idea. They had like cool, like the Red Bull Music Academy was cool. They did cool shows. They had like an art space, like kind of a museum in Chelsea that did
They had
good
a basketball tournament where I want to say it was 1-on-1 or 3-on-3. I can't remember exactly what the specific rules were, but I believe it was called The Rock, and they held the finals at Alcatraz.
That's amazing.
They were doing creative stuff,
Yeah. I don't
like skateboarding, all types of stuff. I think.
It sounds like you don't want to let the cat out of the bag, and we don't have to, but stay tuned for some big basketball tournament news coming from your source right here. I don't want to say too much. I don't want to be Joel Embiid about this.
Don't say too much. Don't get trolled into saying too much.
I don't want Clutch to troll me into saying too much. But so should we try these espresso teenies at some point?
I guess.
I mean,
I'm not
it's
that
probably
enthusiastic about it, but I'll give it a whirl. Like an espresso martini, sure, why not?
Yeah. I mean, our boy at Grub Street, Chris Crowley, has been joking and trying to push apple teenies back into our consciousness. He's like, why stop at espresso? Apple teenies. And I'm like, that actually sounds better to me than a murky, brown, savory drink.
Disagree, but let's bring back the
Oh.
fuzzy navel. Let's bring back Sex on the Beach. All the hits from the Cosmo, the humble cosmopolitan from Sex in the City. Bring it back.
Have you ever had an
full
alcoholic
beverage
lime
nostalgia.
Ricky? I've always wanted an alcoholic lime Ricky because they're super fun drinks. The colors kind of mix together. They're nice, sweet. They're refreshing lime flavor. Throw some vodka in there, man.
I don't think I ever have. Have you had an egg cream?
Oh yeah, for sure. They're not for me, man. But
Could you pour in a little whiskey, perhaps?
I think that's
Make
the
it
point.
an Irish egg cream?
I believe that's the point.
Really?
There are egg creams that don't have that, but it's a, I don't know what came first, but the cocktail move is that frothy, eggy kind of stuff. They're in the same family. But the people who I know who love that vibe always have it end beer style.
See, I always think of egg creams as being sort of very 1940s, like diner, sock hop. Get yourself a nice ice cream sundae and egg cream.
The
You know, people are
1940s,
like, oh my God, these are onion rings. What?
the 1940s sock hop vibe also reminds me of like, or conjures up images of drunken businessmen as well. Like with the suitcase passed out on the street corner. The kid with the newspaper delivery kid throwing the newspaper in his face in the morning. That kind of thing.
I
It's
like
like,
that.
wake up, you deadbeat. It's like, oh, I got to get to work. My boss is going to kill me. Psh, zoom it, baby.
I will say, though, the trend towards sort of 90s, early 2000s drinks, maybe even 90s, is more fun than the hyper mixology bullshit of 2010 or thereabouts. That era of like mixology and when, oh yes, we are going to put eggs into this drink, and like you're waiting around forever and they're pouring these drinks and they all cost a ton. Like that kind of was the worst era for drinking. Like let's
not
go to
to-
a really nice cocktail bar, and you're like, so the whole point here is the drinks. Like the point is never the fucking drinks. The point is the room or the people or the music. It's never the actual drinks. Like you're losing the thread.
I'm on Kyrie about this. I don't understand. I understand the anger for certain bad bartenders and annoying people at places, which seems to be the prevailing theme of this culture since day one. But I love cool cocktails, man. Like they're super fun. I was never mad at them. If someone was like, "Yo, I know this pretty awesome cocktail spot. Do you want to go check it out?" I'll be like, "Hell's yeah."
I felt like there was a novelty to it. And then look, if people want to make elaborate drinks, I'm not going to stop them.
You were
I'm
just at a
talking about
place
that being-
overflowing with espresso teenies.
Yeah, that's a breeze. Espresso teenies. I'm saying I don't have a problem if people want to serve Baroque cocktails, especially restaurants. You want to make up your, have a mixologist come in and make up the menu. Cool. My issue is with like bars being dedicated to that.
Oh, I love
Like
it.
it's okay. You love them?
Well,
I never
I-
feel like I order the right stuff.
I
I feel
mean,
like I'll look at the menu and I'll
I
be
hear
like,
you.
"What do you want? Do you want something that's bitter? Do you want something that's spicy?" And you're like the Del Mono, they're fine. They're fine. I have no real issue with them. It was that there were so many,
Yeah.
and I think the peak or the nadir,
Ralph?
you know the word exactly, was Silencio in Paris. So it was a several floor club that went downwards. It's what David Lynch's place, I think. And it was a club where they'd have DJs playing music and it'd be teeming with people, hard to move around. And they'd be making these really, really elaborate, time-consuming cocktails. And this was around, 2010, 2012 or whatever. And I really do feel like that was like when it reached its lowermost point. It was like in Paris, drinking elaborate cocktails, waiting hours for a drink at a bar in a crowded club. Anyway,
That just sounds annoying because it's crowded.
thankfully, we have moved on as a people.
Hey, man, our vacationing buddy that we mentioned before is one of the best at making these cocktails, man. You pull up to the bar, you see that Australian king, he's going to make you an amazing cocktail.
Again, to each their own. My thing is more that being roped into multiple places, like, oh, we're getting to another cocktail bar, we're going to Mother's Ruin. And then thankfully, we all got on board with fake dive bars, and everything's been great ever since.
Yeah, problem solved. Drinking is perfect. The perfect drink. Yo, did you watch your show? The damn Secession show.
Oh, the one about the Civil War. Secession.
The one about
Oh,
the
yes.
Knicks and the NBA. Yeah.
Oh, Succession. So I had to catch up. I had only watched about half of season 2 prior to last week or so, and I did some binging. The amount of references to dicks I heard, staggering. Over a week and change, just the amount of times I heard about like cocks being put in someone's ear or something. Wow.
It was a lazy ass premiere, man.
Yeah, let's hear what you got to say about it, because I got some opinions. What did you think? You said it was lazy ass.
Well,
Extrapolate, King.
It is extremely difficult to have a hit show like this and keep it going. So respect to the writers. I love that we get new Nas albums. I love that we get new Succession episodes. But it felt like a bunch of superheroes doing their powers one at a time, right? It's like, oh, I love Logan Roy. Do that Logan Roy thing. It's like, I'm going to put my dick in your ear. It's like, there we go. Cousin Greg, are you going to be goofy? Oh, he sent the wrong tweet. Oh, what a doofus. Love Cousin Greg. Not that I'm looking for that much from this show, but I was watching it kind of dumbfounded, being like, now are they fucking with us? Are they messing with us? Are they being like, you guys are morons. Here's an espresso teeny, like, we're just like lapping it up. And I'm like, yo, I love this show. As we discussed on the last Perfect Pod, this show is one of my favorite things that HBO has done. The first episode was odd. I was confused more than anything. I was like, did they lose their superpower, the writer's superpowers that quickly? Are we just kind of, it's like now Ant-Man gets big and now Iron Man flies around. I'm like, oh, I've seen this movie.
Yeah, I think you're right in that ratcheting up the intensity to a place where it's an existential crisis for their company. The family business is jeopardized. It does have the same impact as a superhero movie, which is we have to save the earth. We have to save humanity.
Right.
We have to do this and that. And once people inject that kind of device, you stop caring because it doesn't matter anymore. There's no stakes in the planet because that's theoretical.
Yeah.
Oh my God, mankind will be wiped out if this happens. All right, then let's get on with saving the world. So when they have pushed the stakes this high, it makes me feel like we're not actually really supposed to care about it. And yet there's all this frenzy. There's all this energy. There's all this chaos. And everything is about this. Oh my God. We're going to lose the family business, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I don't care. I care more about the marriage between Tom and Siobhan. Like, that's interesting to me. Right. I care about some of the smaller relationships. I care about internal palace intrigue between family members. But I don't care about the big picture of like, oh my God, we're going to lose the company.
Yeah.
So what?
Right. This is like
not interesting.
It's less. The appeal for me, I realize, is less Game of Thrones and more Survivor. I wanted alliances. Like the copycat show on Showtime is Billions, and that's a hilarious show that kind of like might end up being better regarded in my mind when it's all done, because there's like a psychiatrist involved. There's funny little jokes everywhere that aren't about like, I'm gonna put my dick in your ear, like that kind of thing. And also there's a lot of cutthroat, so it was kind of like Clue, like who did it, who's aligning with who's backstabbing who, and the cliffhanger every episode is like, you didn't know I was on his side. And that's kind of fun. Now that Succession has been going on its third season, it had to make a turn somewhere. And you're right, like battling Armageddon is hard to relate to because their Armageddon is hard to relate to. What we really liked is like unhappy childhoods, people acting out, a clever strategy, right? Like a twist. Instead, it's just buffoonery and greed. And that's how like Game of Thrones kind of, its demise was its lack of creativity when it counted, right?
Yeah, I mean, I only watched the first season of that, so I'm just going to have to take your very trusted word for it.
First season was amazing. Second season was amazing. Third season.
But when it comes to Succession, I think basically when you have these characters who are unlikable, but everyone enjoys watching them, I think there's what you said. There's an inclination to just have them fit their roles. Okay, Greg, get in there. Do Greg stuff. You say, God damn it, fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, you guys do your thing. And I think they haven't really explored some of the subplots that seemed promising or seemed really interesting to the extent that they could have. This is the kind of show to me where you should have 5 simultaneous plots going on and wrapping
totally.
them into each other instead of just one, like the business. And I do think that when they've gotten into some of those smaller subplots, they also risk at times becoming a little bit preposterous. Just as you said, like, here's Cousin Greg. Why is Cousin Greg in the car? And why would Kendall say you're in charge of something?
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that?
Why would he have access to a Twitter account? Like, it's Cousin Greg, man.
Right. Why would Logan have said, we need a blood sacrifice? And then, this is a spoiler, and then said, Kendall, you're going to take the fall for this. Why? They would never do that.
Yeah.
They would never in a million years create that entire scenario where you say, I'm going to give up my son. No, they wouldn't. They would never fucking do that.
And
Like, that was just insane.
heated. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I thought even with that conceit, ending season 2 with the Kendall betrayal would have totally been a nice ending for the season. The problem is, to get a twist that was that punchy in the moment, now you have to deal with the fallout from it, which, as we're saying, it's just people kind of running in circles.
And this is the artist dilemma that athletes don't necessarily have, right? When you have a hit, you get kind of cold feet a little bit. And, I think everybody's inclination is to change, what you eat, how you exercise, how you hang. And when you're making a show like this and it's such a smash hit, I'm sure there's all these voices inside and outside the writers' heads being like, well, give them what they want, shut up and play the hits. And then I'm sure they're trying to leak out different things to satisfy their artistic proclivities, right? But we got a tension that to me was not as interesting, which was trying to preserve the brand and to create a new story. And that's impossible to do. Fleabag ended after 2 seasons. Fleabag season 3 would have been a hit, no doubt. But it kind of would have presented a challenge that the writers, I don't think any writer could have done that well. Killing Eve, same problem. That was so good for a season, but the tension kind of unspooled on them because now they're friends. Now they may be dating. Now she gets a divorce, and we're just like, ooh. But the relationship between these two people when they met each other was what was exciting. So after being introduced to all these characters, having them actually do stuff is a challenge.
I would agree with that. And look, I don't want to pretend as if I'm like a hater on this show, because I'm not.
Hater.
No, I'm not.
No.
We've talked about this in the past. I'm like, I like it. It sometimes gets a little too zingy for me. And like, bing, 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 bing. Oh, cock in your ear. How about that?
Yeah.
Fuck off. But I do like the show. I think it's witty. I enjoy the characters. I think it's well acted. I would say the idea that it provides a peek into the world of the super wealthy and kind of pulls back the veil on big media, and I think those are really fun ideas. I didn't really get that very much from the pilot or from some of the stuff late in series 2. It does feel like it's so plot based that they've kind of lost some of those details, maybe. And in some ways it almost feels like it's like Entourage for someone who does branded content at Vox. Like, wow, look at our overseers in the media industry. They're unhappy and dumb. I love this show. I didn't see a lot of actual trappings of wealth or that how people live, other than that they're always in SUVs. They're always jumping in private planes. They have nice apartments. But that was kind of it. I don't know. It just felt like it's gotten a little bit away from showing us like a really cool peek into an unusual environment and just become very much based on stuff happening, which ironically I vaguely said last week that nothing really happens on this show. And I'm like, too much is happening. Just get back to people in their big houses having awkward dinners. That's kind of what I like about it.
Well, yeah, you pose a good aesthetic point, right? Because we talked last week. Like, I've grown to really enjoy Sorkin stuff, but like the newsroom to me is unwatchable. But you put it in the hands of someone like David Fincher, and he gives you space, and he gives you like this weird expanse of like whatever that may be, melancholy, jealousy, hatred, all this stuff that kind of peppers Sorkin's idea with even more great stuff. And when we talk about the great shows that have survived 2, 3, 4 seasons, like The Sopranos, The Wire, Breaking Bad, all that stuff, they have a thing in common, which is space. And I think that's what you're talking about. Like, let the characters live inside this show at the sacrifice of maybe action or dialogue. And they're going for the newsroom, or they're going for, Entourage, which is totally cool too. I mean, it worked so well for 2 seasons, but I do crave like looking out into the backyard into your pool and seeing ducks. Like I miss those moments in this show, which is supposed to be one of the great shows. So like I want it all. Like, let's go. Like, is this thing gonna work? And I do miss those moments in The Social Network when Jesse Eisenberg is like running through the snow with a good idea. Like it's just really cool.
Yeah, I think that was all it was for me. That there wasn't a lot of time for things to breathe. Now, on Vulture, they wrote about the series, and I believe they've seen 7 of, I want to say 9 episodes.
Shit go down.
And they say that it gets really good, basically from episode 3.
Right. Yeah, I'm ready, man. Let's do this. I heard there's going to be...
I don't want to say we're writing off the series
or
the season based on a pilot that just felt a little lackluster, because I did think season 2 was good. But these were the quibbles that I had.
We were promised one of the best cliffhangers in TV history in this season.
And part of this response that sounds so disgruntled is really just because there was overwhelming hype for it.
Yeah.
Like, just people were so psyched, and then I saw responses, people saying, "Oh my God, that was incredible." I'm like, huh.
Yeah.
I kind of didn't think it was incredible, but I still like the show.
It's cool how we glob on to stuff and like kind of... I love it when we blindly love things. Like I was looking at my Twitter feed and everyone's just like, which character are you from Rounders or Succession? Like, I'm Logan Roy. I act like this. And I love that kind of, because that to me can go 2 ways, as we're going to discuss soon with Ben Simmons. And when it goes the wrong way, it's really dark. And we see that in politics and sometimes art. And when it goes well, I just have to ride with it, because it's like, yo, everyone's so excited. It's like Happy Succession Day, and everyone's like, this is kind of weird. I'm like, both things about this are weird, but I'm with it. I'm going to ride this out too. I want my mind to be changed after episode number 1.
Yeah. So we got to wait till 3 for that to happen.
Who dies? Let's go.
There's another article that ran in the LA Times, saw it trending on Twitter, as Succession did.
Yeah.
Actually, that whole first episode of Succession was really about Twitter. It's like, we know who they're paying attention to and who they are. Blue checks. Article on Twitter about people in LA who moved to Joshua Tree during the pandemic, and prices have soared there, something like 40% over the last year. They've built houses, and now they're concerned about the impracticalities of living in the desert. But the Instagram posts are fire. This is the dilemma that they now encounter.
The Instagram
Why aren't we
post...
living out in the desert?
Right.
Shouldn't we be in the desert?
Yes, man. Joshua Tree sounds amazing. First of all, Joshua Tree, the album, criminally underrated. It was written off as like this weird Jock Bridge and Tunnel thing. Shout out to that record and Brian Eno. Anyway, I think about that record constantly. Huge record. boring as hell because you've heard every song 100 times. But the desert is awesome, right? We know some of our homies moved to the desert.
Yeah.
It seems beautiful and great, but to say that people moving to the wrong place for maybe the wrong reasons is like the story as old as damn time, right?
Well, this is very much similar to what happened here in New York during the pandemic. There was already a trend, probably just something cyclical that has happened with people in cities wanting to move out. That seems to happen, I don't know what every 15 years or 10 years. There always seems to be this back and forth.
And there's
people
an
are
age
moving into cities.
range.
Now people are
Yeah.
moving out. Right. And with millennials who comprise a lot of these people moving out, it's probably just an age range thing. Oh, people
They have some
hit,
money.
People have hit 40
They have
and
kids.
they decide they could own property in Rhinebeck, but they probably
Shout out to
couldn't
Rhinebeck.
buy, say, a whole brownstone in Bed-Stuy. Just these kind of decisions. So that happened here as well. And we joked about it somewhat because the idea that you'd move out of New York due to a pandemic and then say, okay, I guess I'm going to spend the rest of my life living in this house that I found up there
I mean,
is a little extreme, right? Like, yeah, I found a place 45 minutes out of Troy. I guess this is where I'm going to build a life because I was scared of COVID.
and not to make light of what happened in that time, because for the first few months of COVID, I was like washing my groceries. Like no one knew. It's like you should just wash your groceries because we don't know what this is. So we know so much more now. But at the time I was like, it sounds reasonable for people to bail. I couldn't do it, but I would have if I had the resources. I don't think that was a wrong move. It was scary. We didn't know what this was, and New York was the epicenter of the scariness.
Oh, yeah. I get why people did it. I'm saying it's also a strange move to make and then not reconsider it. So the
Yeah.
idea that people are realizing that there are some downsides to living 2.5 hours away from New York or LA in rural communities that may not really want them there. That seems pretty natural to me.
Yeah, I bought this car because I thought it was perfect. I love the way it looks. It's like, here are the monthly payments you have to make. It's like, oh, I have certain regrets about this. I'm like, well, that makes sense. You bought a new car. I don't really. Yeah, it's an interesting idea because I think a lot of. Is this like a lesson in just lording over someone else's mistake? Because people trying to make big decisions into successes is more natural than not, I think. And people claiming that they're failures is the first reaction, right?
Yeah, of course. But as we keep harping on, some things are not for everyone.
Yeah.
I do have some sympathy for people who went out and got pets during the pandemic and now say, actually, maybe I shouldn't own a large dog. Maybe that was a mistake. I was lonely. I wanted some companionship. I got a large dog. Maybe a large dog is not ideal for me living in a small apartment with a job that I'm returning to.
Is the
And
large
maybe I
dog
wanna get rid of this
Joaquin
large dog.
Hence the apartment, Madison Square Garden.
It is Glenn Robinson, the big dog.
What?
But I understand that people who are animal lovers would say, well, that's very cruel. But at the same time, what's the obligation? That you say, hey, I think I'd love to have a pet, and then I realize that I'm probably not a good pet owner, but I should now take care of this animal in a way that may not be great for the next 15 years? I just don't know what the moral responsibility is to an animal that you have had for 8 months.
Yeah.
Do you now have to wait for it to die of old age? I don't know. That doesn't seem like part of the equation unless it was described as such when the person took the dog. Like, this dog is like a person. You can't give it up here. You gotta raise this dog. until you bury it. And that's that.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have done that.
Yeah, I mean, trying to figure out what motivates certain people as they get older or during like a global pandemic is like a really interesting task. And I do think we can get to the bottom of it, but it was monetary, right? And then we pretend like on Instagram, maybe some people like me would pretend on Instagram that your life is different than your actual life, whatever. Old idea. But it is financial, I think. And when Joshua Tree ceases to become a good investment, people kind of get weird about it, right? Like the article could have easily been like, if you bought in on Joshua Tree at the right time, you seem to be able to make a profit now for 40%, whatever it is, you know? My first question is, what's the vibe of this person who wrote the article? Like, where do they live? Yeah.
Right. I mean, also, like Joshua Tree had an uptick in popularity over, the last decade anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And I think part of it was Instagram. It was beautiful. And you had Coachella there,
mm-hmm.
where we would all put on our Native American headdresses.
It seems cool at the time.
Go listen to Diplo and A-Track.
Pound eggnog, as they do.
Espresso Teeny.
Yeah.
Hear a little bit of Steve Aoki. Just live our best lives.
Yeah. I mean, people, I don't know. Like, so the article kind of talks about the changing migration, maybe is the wrong word, of the population within California and how people are moving out of the cities, whether that be about taxes or quality of life or money. They're either moving to tax havens like Texas or like for a better life out in the desert with more space, especially since we're going more remote with our work. All this makes sense to me. Like throughout my life, I've tried to figure out what people are talking about when they talk about big ideas like gentrification and migration and moving and people doing things, incentivized to do certain things at certain points in their lives. Moving out to the desert, especially as you said, Joshua Tree was hot for a year. A decade, 2 decades. Like this kind of makes sense even outside of a pandy, right?
Maybe. I don't know. This is just natural, though. I think you had various reasons that are completely different from when you had suburban flight back during, like the crack cocaine era,
mm-hmm.
the 80s and 90s. You had people with money leaving cities because they were fearful. They were worried their property values would nosedive. There was so much hype about crime in America's inner cities. There was the war on drugs. You had Ronald Reagan as president, et cetera, et cetera. And you had people with means to leave, essentially hollowing out urban centers in the United States. And, New York rebounded faster than most of those places. But you're still seeing that slowly coming back, in whether it's in upstate New York or spots that did not have that same kind of
mm-hmm.
surge of people returning into cities. But, we've seen real estate soar in places like Boston, San Francisco, New York over the last 20 years. I mean, a long period of time.
Yeah.
And now the reason people are leaving is because it's too expensive to stay in cities. And that was already happening anyway.
And that is, I think, definitely true, obviously. But the thing that as soon as you scratch at the surface, you find out a phenomena. I found out a phenomena was as soon as prices kind of go up, people who have lived there cash in. So people, you're right, prices do skyrocket. And if you're holding something that is of value to somebody new, a lot of people take that. And it's in our nature to move around. So not a lot of people, you always hear the stories that, some families have grown up in the same neighborhood for generations, but that's not always the case. A lot of teenagers move away from home. A lot stay, but in situations like cities, like that kind of boom, there's kind of a phenomenon where there's the demand, which seems aggressive, and the willingness to feed that demand, which doesn't exist without that too.
Yeah, I have no idea what the numbers would look like on that. Like if you grew up in New York City and your family has a place here, are you more likely to move out of the city, or are you more likely to stay here? No idea.
Yeah.
You know, do you say, this place is expensive now, I'm going to go bounce to Albany?
Yeah.
Or do you say, hey, my parents have a place here, I got a spot to stay, I got friends, I'll stick around? I don't know what the statistics are. I do feel like kids from New York having a toehold here, especially when they've had families that, you know, were in New York for, let's say, 30 years,
Yeah.
there probably is like a little more incentive to like stick around in, you know, your rent controlled apartment or whatever.
Right. I was at an auto body shop in the Lower East Side years ago. Maybe it was like 15 years ago. I was helping my friend fix their car. It was kind of a minor emergency. And this auto body shop had been there for decades, generations. And it was kind of the length of the block. They had their offices, then they had a warehouse where they had like parking and were working on cars long term, and then like a quick fix building. And there was a lot of action, and we were there. The office was buzzing, and some dude just rushes in and talks to the guy at the desk. He's like, "Hey, how much do you want for this whole place?" And he was just like, 10 million or don't talk to me. And he's like, "All right." And he darts out, and we're like, holy shit. That was just a very casual interaction for a huge move. And he was like, oh, 2 or 3 times a day, some young whippersnapper comes in and throws dollar amounts at me. He's like, I'm definitely selling this place and I'm going to make money. And we're just like, respect to you. He's just like, yeah, why not? You guys are going crazy over this neighborhood. I'm just going to move to Queens.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Speaking of people thinking about moving on, how you like that for a segue?
Wow, it was incredible. Are you talking about RJ Barrett and the Knicks?
No, I'm talking about the latest flare-up between Ben Simmons and the Philadelphia 76ers. Oh, my God.
Weird.
Twitter is in an uproar. Wow. I'm like Cousin Greg looking at Twitter and be like, wow, look at this response. I think the Pope followed you. People cannot get enough of this soap opera.
It's a
and
whole
at
culture.
this point, you know, we know how wrathful Sixers fans are.
Oh, yeah.
But at this point, you have to say they're getting joy from this.
Oh, 1,000%.
Their rage is joy.
But now they know it too. Before
They
it was
know it.
right. Before it was Schadenfreude. Now they're just like, we love this shit. He had a
Oh
phone
my
in his
God.
pocket.
Oh.
It was a big lumpy phone in the shape of a jersey, but let's drag him anyway.
I mean, my thing is this. Ben Simmons requested a trade. He demanded it. He said, I'm not going to play for this team ever again. Get me the fuck out of Dodge. Don't want to be here. He's threatened to sit out the whole season. He's not going to play another game in Philadelphia. And then the money stopped coming in. And as we've been saying all along, it was a rhetorical gambit. And they kind of folded, right?
Wait, I thought we were mad at him because he wasn't taking money and he was disrespecting us people who work so hard for our money. Now he's taking the money. Oh, I hate him even more.
I don't think he is even getting money right now. It's all very complicated whether he's getting money or not. Mm-hmm. But he clearly returned with the intention of earning some money, especially with the season starting tomorrow. But that said, this is a guy who said, I never want to play another game for this team. This is not a guy who said, all right, you didn't trade me despite all my demands. Time to go chuckle it up with my teammates and pretend as if nothing happened.
Listen,
why would he do that? Why would he do that?
You're not
He
breaking up
wants
with
to
me.
be
I'm breaking up
traded.
with you.
But this whole confusion stems because Sixers fans really believe that the team was shopping him. At this point, I think Philly is exploring trades because they would like this to come to an end. But this was all one-sided. It was so clearly all from Simmons. He said, trade me or I won't play. And
And
then
this,
we've gotten to this point. But Sixers fans still seem to believe, and the media still seems to believe, that this was going to be a mutual breakup that has sort of gone wrong because there weren't trade offers there for the Sixers. No. Simmons coming to camp is a huge win for the organization. They don't want to trade him. They may trade him, but they don't want to.
and
Unless it was like, yes, you're getting Dame Lillard back or whatever. They don't want to trade him. Getting him to show up at practice was a win. He has no choice but to act out. He has no choice but to act irritated and petulant and not do drills. This is what he has to do in order to save face because he took a huge fucking L.
And this is a checkers move, kind of. Now Morey and the team have responded. Like this language doesn't mean anything to me. Like, suspended 1 game for conduct detrimental to the team. He doesn't want to play anymore. He's told you for months he does not want to put on a Sixers uniform. So it's like, we're going to suspend you for 1 game for conduct detrimental to the team. And he's like, no shit, I told you I didn't want to play. So this is kind of just a way to shape leverage, right? And I think Morey's doing the smart thing here, because what he wants is leverage to keep him on the team, probably.
I mean, the
or
weirdest
get a good trade for him.
Yes, of course. The weirdest people in this dynamic are those who are like, oh, get this guy out of here. I'm like, how are you so easily trolled?
Yeah,
This
I
is
know.
what he wants. He's going into practice and acting up in order to try to court fury from teammates, from coaches, from fans. He's doing this to try to get traded. This is like, be like, why would he do this? Oh, this guy. I'm like, he's trying to get traded, dude. And
Yeah.
if he can get people riled up enough, it might work. And what I love about this, because Ben Simmons is a king, and what I love about this is that he's trying one of the most audacious trade attempts in modern NBA history. A all NBA talent going into a 4 years contract during his prime and trying to get traded by being annoying.
Yeah. I mean,
Like, and Doc keeps falling for it. Joe keeps falling for it. Sixers media and fans keep falling for it. When he realized that his reputation had been so assaulted by Sixers Nation that this strategy became palatable was when this became fun. Because no other player does this.
but
Because
Allen
no other
Iverson,
player was treated like Ben Simmons.
who called for Simmons' execution, also said, "These are the best fans in the world."
Oh, yeah.
Philly fans sitting there, Johns that we love, are like, could we be the best fans in the world? I think we might be close to the best fans in the world because we don't take no nonsense. And I do think this is a fan story, because like my favorite people to go to anything with, whether that be a bar, a show, a music show, Coachella, or a game, are people who are like, okay, we can argue about which album is their best, if they fell off the second album, if the Blueprint 2 was even worth it. But he's playing my favorite song, so I love this. This is incredible that he's like performing in front of us. And I really like hanging out with people who can go to a game and be like, this is very cool. And I most of the times go to games with people who are like, that guy's a bum. And I'm like, well, I know what you mean. It's just like, he should be off the team. I'm like, sure, I totally get that, but we're at the game, so let's like, I don't know. Let's do something as well as that. But the way the Sixers fans have reacted to the Simmons thing is fun in a way. Like, I have fun following it. I'm a Knicks fan, so it's great to me. But at some point, it's gotten hurtful, and I don't think I like to live in the world of politics and Q and MAGA and extreme anything. And the Sixers, if like we stop joking about it, and now it's just people being like, well, Allen Iverson may have a point. Let's not really execute him, but let's end his happiness forever. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of dark.
That was just the lack of a comma, man.
Yo, comma's underrated, and the way I tweet, I got to take lessons from that too.
I mean, Allen Iverson's thing was just,
It was nice.
it was a lack of a comma.
Yeah. But, it's funny, right? And
Of course it was funny. I was like, little harsh. And people were like, no, he really means it. I'm like,
know.
it was a missing comma, dude.
no, but he's actually saying he doesn't deserve anything he's gotten. I'm like,
No, he's saying to kill him, to chop his head off.
I was joking on Twitter being like, okay, which one of you weekend warrior gods at the YMCA thinks they're better than Ben Simmons? And people were like, well, I'm definitely more brave than him because I'll take that shot. And I'm like, what is happening? Oh, this may be in a joke in itself, but like, it's like, well, I wouldn't fail like that if I was his size. And I'm like, oh, this is so weird.
Oh, totally.
Conduct detrimental to the team. Should they suspend Doc Rivers one game for conduct detrimental to the team because he's not conducting himself as the locker room whisperer that we thought he was?
I think he should have been suspended for a lot longer following the postseason. But my thing is this also. We're all falling victim to this, right?
Yeah, for
Me,
sure.
you, everybody. Because nothing really even happened.
Nothing's happening.
Like, nothing happened. And everyone's like, this is a nightmare for the NBA.
Yo, he's going to set up the whole season.
I'm sorry. So Ben Simmons didn't want to do a defensive drill at practice because, again, he's trying to get traded and being petulant, which is his only move right now. It's his only move. He doesn't have another move. He's trying to get traded still, but acting poorly.
Yeah.
That's his only move.
Yeah.
And then Doc said, all right, if you're not going to do that, hit the showers. And he left.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean,
a guy who threatened to hold out the entire season acted petulant during a drill and like, this is explosive.
everybody's getting what they want in this situation except Ben Simmons. The team is kind of getting what they want to a lesser degree.
The team wants him to play.
I'm sure the teammates are. I don't think Joel Embiid is happy with him, but I think that's easily repairable if Joel Embiid takes off that V-Lone T-shirt and takes off those white Air Force Ones.
Look, I don't think his teammates necessarily want him there now, but I also don't think that applies to all of them.
Yeah, I don't think.
I don't know if they care about it being, quote, a distraction. I just think anyone who's on a team and someone says, I'll play for anyone except this team, you're gonna be like, well, I'm not gonna be in my feelings over this. But if you don't want to be here, ship him out. Like we're here to play ball. We don't need this guy around, even if we think he's good. We're better with him. But if this guy's like, fuck off, then okay, bring in someone else, make a trade, and bring in someone who wants to play here. But Jalen Rose made a good point too. When you're actually on the court, whether you have a good personal relationship with somebody doesn't really matter. It's how they're playing on the floor. If
for
Ben
sure.
and
Culture doesn't exist.
If Ben and Tobias are not getting along, and that means that Ben doesn't throw Tobias a pass when he can turn down an open three. No, but seriously, if they're freezing out teammates, that's a problem. If they're not trying hard on defense, that's a problem.
Oh, you mean
and maybe
Kobe
we'll
Bryant
see
did?
some of that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Kobe behavior.
Literally stuff that Kobe did.
Yeah.
Quitting games, not passing to teammates, or
not
only
shooting.
passing to teammates.
Yeah.
Literally all Kobe shit. Mamba mentality.
Yeah. Or Jordan mentality too. But when I say everyone's getting what they want, it's like if you think about it, the haters are getting exactly what they want. Cookies is getting what we want because we get to talk about kind of a pivotal, interesting, kind of revealing way to look at the game. Me as a Knicks fan, I'm getting exactly what I want. Taking a good team off the table. Not that the Knicks are close to re-entering the NBA, but cool. Celtics fans are not mad at this. No one is mad at this.
No, I mean, for me, I'm I don't care if Ben Simmons ever plays another game for the Sixers. Send him somewhere else. That's cool. Or figure this out and play together. Also cool. I don't care what the outcome is in any way, shape, or form. I just do not care. I think this is funny. I think Ben
it's too far
refusing
gone. It's
to do a drill and then dropping the basketball and walking out of practice is funny.
Yes,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
Joe, I don't care about that, man. I think that's funny. I think him being suspended is funny. I think the whole thing is funny. The idea that it's a nightmare or worth getting angry about, I don't think anyone actually feels that way. Seeing the outcry on Twitter, I'm like, no, everyone's enjoying this. This is funny.
And yeah, and it's now that the season's ramping up, it has everyone's attention, and I think Ben is generating so many eyes and so good for the NBA in a dark way and an unsustainable way maybe, but all these things are happening in the league. There's so much intrigue in the league, and we're not even paying attention to the mess that is Zion Williamson and the Pelicans, or the fact that DeAndre Ayton, a number 1 overall pick, went over Luka Doncic, is not getting a contract extension. Like, this is the stuff that would have had us a flutter a year and a half ago, but now it's kind of about a conversation through the lens of culture, right? Like you said, and what Jalen Rose was saying, it's like, when it comes down to it, culturally, what happens on the court is hard to prove, because you could see when Kobe Bryant's just being petulant, right? And that's obvious. Or when Michael Jordan's just being a jerk on the court in big pressure situations. That's true. Ben Simmons is kind of like, it's not a culture issue when it comes down to the game, but it's about arguing if it's Tupac or Biggie, right? Like, the argument is the thing. The music, like, I gotta be honest, like, I never cared about Tupac's music. I can't really name more than like 7 or 8 songs, but I can argue about Tupac versus Biggie forever, and we've kind of, I feel like we've strided into 2 kinds of fans: people who argue about what Ben Simmons' ethics are, and people who argue about what he does on the court.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. But I do think discussions of Ben Simmons have weirdly integrated ethics and morality into basketball in a way that is really awkward and very bizarre. That this idea that Ben Simmons should have worked on his game. He should have worked on his game. You're like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Super weird.
First of all, he's not obligated to work on his game at all. Not one bit. Not one bit. He has zero obligation to do that. If he wants to spend all offseason fiddling around with his gamer clan, he can do that. You can't be mad.
Drinking hot toddies.
Can't be mad.
Yeah.
Drinking eggnogs. Can't be mad, because that's his time. He can do whatever he wants.
And we've discussed this before. I think a mistake I used to fall into, and I think it's a deeply American thing, is the fact that we own certain people. Like, well, you're a movie star and we go to your movies, therefore I own a share of you, so why are you acting in the way I don't agree with? Like, these ballers have our concerns should not be their concerns.
In other news about the NBA,
Yes.
very quickly, opening night is tonight. I don't think we really need to talk about those games, because if you listen to this podcast anytime after today, you'll already know the result. Mm-hmm. But you have a opening night lineup of the Milwaukee Bucks against the Brooklyn Nets in a rematch of the Eastern Conference semifinals. And then you have the Lakers taking on the Golden State Warriors. Sort of a matchup of fated grandeur.
Yeah.
One thing I quickly wanted to talk about. What's your take on the Warriors this year? There is
I was going to mention this.
a schism here, right?
Yeah.
You have fans and pundits, talking heads, saying that their ceiling is the NBA Finals, maybe winning a championship. And then you have, on the other side, people who make models based on previous records, stats, aging curves, etc. Mm-hmm. And they are all pretty much out on the Warriors and say that they look like a play-in team. Where do you fall on this Golden State spectrum?
I think they're a play-in team. I think Steph Curry is maybe still at his peak. That dude is incredible, but he's alone out there. Klay Thompson, I hope Klay Thompson has like some great moments this season. He's coming back from horrendous injuries, and I really like him. So maybe next year will be the year for him. I'm looking at their roster, and I just hate to name players, but this is not a different roster than last season. And Curry by himself can't really do all of this. Draymond Green is incredible, but he needs certain things to click in for his powers to become maximized, right? Yeah, I'm selling this team. I think they're going to be very fun and competitive, but I think they're going to be around the play-in zone. What do you think, Espresso Martini King?
I would tend to agree with you. I think they feel like a 6 seed,
Yeah.
7 seed. Obviously Curry is still really great, and I think swapping out some of the guys like a Kelly Oubre and instead bringing in an Otto
again.
Porter.
Yeah.
There are some places where guys who are kind of bad can be swapped out for guys who are less bad or sort of good.
Definitely.
And in the preseason, they've had a couple guys like just going really haywire, shooting from 3.
Jordan Poole.
Jordan Poole primarily, yeah. And look, maybe that kind of thing works out. I mean, they have a better roster than last year. Clay ideally can come back at some point. But I still look around the West and say, how is this team going to actually be good? I don't know.
My question is, how the hell is Wiggins and Weissman still on this roster? I thought they were chips to be kind of used, and I hate to describe human beings that way, but like, I thought Wiggins was passing through, and I thought Weissman, I forget what number he was. Number 1? No, number 2. Sorry. I haven't had enough espresso martinis. But the fact that they haven't flipped him into a piece that better suits Steph Curry and his needs right now, which is not having Klay Thompson around, is surprising to me. I thought they're somehow still holding Kuminga, which was an odd pick as well. Why are these players still on this roster? Is it because there's no takers?
Well, it seems like they're trying to execute a tricky middle ground of contending maybe while also sort of rebuilding at the same time. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's impossible to do, but it really just depends on, can those young guys contribute? Because to your point, you can swap it out at any time. Mm-hmm. At some point you can say, all right, let's go get Bradley Beal. Fuck it.
Yeah, totally.
Pull the plug. Here's some prospects. Here's some young guys. And maybe they can even accrue some value, in the situation of
get
Philly.
Simmons, man.
Sure. But, in the situation with Philly, they used, the 21st pick on Maxey or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he ended up being a good pick. He played and he added some value. So maybe these guys, so their early lottery picks will look good early on if they put him in a position where they can succeed. Maybe Wiseman will have more value in a month than he did during this offseason. Mm-hmm. Those things are also possible here. These are not static pieces. And again, don't like calling players pieces, but if we're talking about them as components to a deal, they certainly have upside. They also have some downside, but their value to other teams is in flux. Mm-hmm. It's malleable. Mm-hmm. If Wiseman looks a lot better this year, if he's put on muscle, if he's making smarter decisions, someone says, okay, actually, this guy could be my starting center in like a year and a half. Okay, all right, he's valuable to me in a way that he may not right at this exact moment.
And certain decisions like that, yeah, you're totally right. But then Wiseman is something you have to groom and present and repackage and create. They passed up LaMelo Ball, and I hate to harp on draft stuff, and of course the draft is kind of a guessing game, and a lot of things don't pan out. But the Warriors seemed, when they said light years ahead, there was no proof to deny that. I was like, yeah, you guys have the best team I've ever seen in my life. And you guys play in a way that kind of takes advantage of the deficiencies in strategy of the rest of the league. Sure, that checks out. And then ever since then, all these head-scratching moves. And Wiseman was not a popular number 2 overall pick at the time. just because of the way big men were being used in the NBA now. And I wonder what they're thinking, because Steph Curry needs help immediately. He doesn't really have half a season to wait for Wiseman to get better so they can trade him, right? Like, it has to happen soon if they want to win another championship, which they could.
I don't know. I don't know. Do they want to win a championship? Yes, they have 160 million in payroll right now. They would
It's
very
on the
much
table.
like.
He's
They would like to win a title.
He's unbelievable, Curry.
Yeah, I also think in some ways we know how valuable his gravity is.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, though, I think last year did show the limits of what Curry can do as opposed to like a Doncic or a Harden. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean they're better players than him, but I don't know if you can just say, Steph, here's the ball, get us 55 wins. I just don't know if you can do that with him. And that's not a knock on his talent, because he's fantastic. He led the league in scoring. He's hyper efficient. He is a scoring dynamo. But I'm not sure he can kind of generate that kind of offensive output in terms of creating shots at the same time as the LeBrons, the Hardens, and the Doncic's, or even the Trae Young. This is not saying that these guys are better than him. They just provide something slightly different.
This has been your knock on Curry forever, and I'm with it. It's interesting. I don't feel the same way, but you discussed this before last season, and to various degrees you were correct, and to various degrees he kind of played even better than I thought he would. He was an MVP.
I mean, he was
candidate.
awesome.
Yeah.
He was awesome. Don't get me wrong.
He
I mean,
did
the guy
everything
averaged,
he could as a guard.
The guy averaged 32 a game,
Yeah.
shot 42% from three. He tore it up.
But
But
yeah,
he has under 6 assists a game, and you just compare that to guys like Luka and Trae. They're just doing more out there. But he was also not
I'm
playing
not
with.
sure. Yeah.
Again, I know.
Yeah.
And,
Tough.
And
Yeah.
I could
hear you.
also, but I would also entertain an argument to say that, these kind of like scorer distributor hybrids, of which those are the main ones right now, and maybe LaMelo will become one eventually. But right now it's primarily LeBron, Harden, Luka, Trae.
Yeah.
I would say those are the ones, right?
Yeah, and it makes
Is there anyone we're forgetting who is, Giannis passes and scores a lot. Simmons passes a lot and scores less. I mean, there are other guys who do it, but those are your main like juggernauts. And to some extent, if those teams run into someone with kryptonite, then the team falls apart.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why Curry, with his outrageous like one skill that's just so beyond what other people can do, maybe that's actually a piece that's easier to build with more talent around you than a singular offensive force that dominates the ball. I can see that argument.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you listed all those players, and I'm not even sure they're better than Curry now. I'd almost take Curry. I'd think about it. Jokic comes to mind. It's hard to think of him, but he's one, right?
I just spaced on him. Yes, Jokic is absolutely the other one.
And but like in a vacuum, ooh.
And Dame is a little bit lower, but he's also a guy who he does average a lot of assists.
I might take Curry over all of them, and it might take a little bit of roster assembly to maximize Curry's skill set. And it's tough because Draymond Green, I love Draymond Green. He is kind of like, it's hard to see if he's saving himself or he's aging. I think he might be a little of both. But he doesn't have, we can talk about Wiggins' shooting percentage or these other guys around him not being as good finishers as Klay Thompson or obviously Kevin Durant. But also, Wiggins is never standing in the right spot. He's never, doing the things that makes Curry comfortable. Wiggins has made himself valuable in other ways, like locking down more on defense than before, which is great. But he's the wrong fit for Curry, right? And in a way, Wiseman is kind of the wrong fit for Curry. I'm waiting to see what the Warriors do, because if they have success with Curry eventually, this will not be the roster. So I'm just waiting to see.
Yeah, I am totally open to both of these ideas that Curry can't singularly carry a team to glory in the way that other players can.
Yeah.
But
Harden's not been
Curry's-
able to do it.
I mean, come on. Curry
He's
doesn't
great.
get-
But then again, Curry's got a bunch of championships with a bunch of great players, but Harden had some good players on that team, man, and I think they're one of the best franchises in the last 10 years. But like, our listeners are going to be like, what are you talking about? Curry has a bunch of rings and Harden is still looking for one. It's a metric too, right? It's a too general of a metric, but
I mean, the best player that Harden played with was CP3. And
that's pretty awesome.
he got-
He got hurt.
yeah, but
he got hurt.
they were up 3-2 on the Warriors, who had KD.
Klay Thompson got hurt and KD got hurt. Like, that would have been
Not in that series.
Oh no! Eventually for Curry, right? Like, it all fell apart on Curry when
Of course.
visibly.
My point is just that I think you could argue that there are offensive juggernauts who can help a team during the regular season and take them to a higher plateau than Curry can by himself. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they are better than him. They just do something slightly different because what he has is not replicable.
I'd almost say
replicable.
Curry in any situation over Harden. It's close for sure. Harden is maybe one of the best offensive players ever, but for what Curry does, I might take him in every scenario. He's the gravity thing just blows my mind, and the way
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's weird because defensively, Harden is definitely better than Curry.
Harden's underrated defensively for sure.
You know, Curry's not as awful as people have said. He's okay.
Yeah, he gets
but
his steals.
He's decent.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he's not a terrible defensive player. The Golden State defense was like rated top 5 last year, which I'm sure would surprise most people. The defense was good,
Surprising.
but
Yeah.
their offense wasn't good, which is
Surprising.
weirder.
Yeah. Well, they got a bunch of scrubs on that team, man. It's like, I don't know. Eric Paschal had moments, but Weissman kind of was disappointing for 95% of his minutes. It's tough. Get this king some help, man. Harden also needs some ballers with him, right? And
See, that's why I'm kind of not, because they're sort of different. Same with Luka. I just don't think you could swap out Luka for Curry on last year's team.
Luka's not even close to a championship right now. That team is not going to win it all.
No, I agree with you. They're definitely not. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
they
all
got no
talking
chance,
in
right? Yeah.
No, none. We're talking in hypotheticals here. I'm just saying, look at last year's team. Did the Mavericks or Golden State have more talent around their star? I don't know.
I love Porzingis, so that's a tough call for me. I think Porzingis is so awesome, and he just had he's in a goofy era of his career.
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, all that to be said,
Hyped for the season, man.
yeah, watching Golden State last year was only good when Curry was just going on an absolute rampage.
Rampage. It was cool.
Those nights were cool, but they also did have the feeling of Jay-Z dropping in on Jeezy's song.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, he led the league in scoring. I just meant he was all right, I've been disrespected. It's time for Curry to show Lillard who's boss and just pour 70 on him.
Doesn't this have some of Simmons hater energy though? It's just you're great, but how come you're not greater? Right?
No. He led the league in scoring. He's the best shooter of all time. All those things. This is no knock on him.
MVP
I only just
candidate.
think that I just kind of think that Golden State they got their flowers. They got their chips. I think they would like to win more. I think the organization has invested heavily in this group in a way that they would also expect some returns on spending that much money on payroll. But I just don't know if Golden State's this is it. We got 2 more chances for a championship. Let's go. I don't know.
Well, they're making so much revenue from their new arena, and that franchise is extremely popular still, even if they don't win another chip. Like, you still have Curry there. The fact that Curry didn't get like a piece of that action is crazy to me. Like, he built that nuclear, that like shooting
I mean,
star of a franchise.
well, this is the whole problem of the NBA. Like,
Yeah.
any player who says I'm gonna be in this city forever, any star
Yeah.
like the Dame Lillard, I'm gonna be the face of this franchise. Like, cool, you are playing for legacy points.
Yeah.
That's great, and you can be the greatest player in the history of the Blazers, right after Zebo, and
Carmelo.
you will be identified with that franchise, and you will be the face of it for a generation. But ultimately, whatever you've contributed to the value or the valuation
Yeah.
of the Blazers goes directly into another person's pocket.
Yeah.
Profits you're splitting. You're getting your cut.
Yeah.
They're getting their cut. Players, your teammates get some. Ownership gets the other half. But the valuation of the property itself, of the entity of the Blazers, you don't get a dime. Sorry.
It's funny when a company like Chobani kind of gives every single employee, right down to like the delivery people, a cut in the company, and that happens, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's great, no problems. That's very nice and kind, and probably really smart." And we don't see that much of it, like it probably should happen in sports in our lifetime, because the fact that the house that Curry built isn't part owned by him seems just antiquated. It's just going to seem weird in a generation, I think.
And maybe they've cut a deal. Like those,
Yeah.
those tech bastards always do.
Well, Ewing walking into MSG just not being fully celebrated and recognized. He's like, "I built this house." I'm like, "You kind of did, but like time is undefeated, man, and these kids don't really remember you anymore."
Sure, but Dolan's like, if you wanted to actually sell that team, absolutely, Patrick.
He created billions of dollars.
This part
for
here,
Dolan.
billions for Dolan.
That frozen envelope was a ticket to like $10 billion.
Speaking of large amounts of money, let's quickly touch on your man, DeAndre Ayton.
Woo.
Did not get the max from the Phoenix Suns that he was looking for. This has been soundly ridiculed by basketball Twitter, and they're using it as an example of how Suns owner Robert Sarver is a cheap ass. What do you think? Is he a cheap ass? Should he have said, Ayton, here's the max?
He can be both, right? He could be smart and cheap. It's something I aspire to. But DeAndre Ayton is a risky max player, man. He's not like Luka Doncic. He's not like Trae Young. But he's really helpful and really good. And maybe he is going to have a great long career in the NBA. That said, he just poured money into Mikal Bridges, right? And Bridges might be the smarter play here because he's cheaper and maybe will affect winning as much as Ayton will. And Ayton had a nice series, but he was also exploited a little bit defensively off of pick and rolls and off of screens. And man, I'm sure it was not an easy decision for the Suns, but I'm with them. They can maybe throw more money at him if they decide to. He's restricted, right?
Well, he will be restricted after this next season.
So it's not out of question, but they're such a win-now team that they go how Chris Paul goes, and Chris Paul, sadly, only probably has a few more years of dominance in him. To sign up to Ayton long-term at that price tag is a harsh toke. What do you think?
Ayton's one of the few, double-double guys in the league that has a certain appeal from a boomer standpoint. 20 and 10 gives you 14 and 10, blocks a shot, super efficient.
Only blocks a
Good.
shot. Yeah.
He's good. He's a good player. True shooting percentage, 65%. Among the league leaders. He's hyper efficient, scores a bit, rebounds a bit. His defense is better. He's still not really a very good player. He's
I know,
good.
I know.
He's good.
Is he an all-star? Probably.
No,
He
no,
could
not even
be.
close. Oh, in the future, maybe, but right now, absolutely not.
No, right.
No. You know, is he better than like Vooch? Like, no.
No. I mean, it's interesting because
If we're talking about offensive-oriented centers, I mean, they play very differently, but neither one of them is, really a defensive stopper.
it's tough to have that kind of investment in that position with that kind of player because the Suns might be looking at the field and be like, well, what if we pay someone like Mitchell Robinson a third of that money? Will he affect wins more than Ayton just being a specialist defensively? Maybe. Like that and then should we spend that money elsewhere, like locking down Mikal Bridges number 2? I'm like, ooh, that's nasty a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, look,
There's
if
millions
this
of
is
ways.
just about salary space,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I want Ayton to get his money. I want them to take as much money from Robert Sarver as possible. Call him a cheap ass. What do you mean you won't pay this guy the max? Pay him the fucking max, eat the salary cap hit, eat the luxury tax, move on with your life. Give the kid some cash. Generational wealth. I love it. But if we're not talking about it from that standpoint,
Right.
I'm with you. I look at, you look at someone like Mitchell Robinson. You're like, I don't really think Ayton gives you much that Mitch doesn't.
I agree.
I don't think Nerlens is like a significant downgrade from Ayton. They kind of do the same stuff.
Yo, I'd rather have Nerlens. Definitely. In a vacuum, same cost, I kind of would take Nerlens Noel, right?
I think Nerlens or Mitch are both better defensive players than Ayton is. Look, Ayton is very young, but those guys aren't old. We're talking about guys who are like 24, 25 years old. Mitch is only 23.
We'll see what the market has in store for Mitch Robinson, but I don't think it's going to be the max. Or I don't think
No,
it's not
hell
going to
no.
be Jordan Bell money. Get out of here.
No. I mean, look, Mitch averages basically 11 and 10 per 36 minutes. He blocks more shots. He's just as efficient. But yeah,
He's a
he'll
better
probably. I don't know that he is, but it's not like Max versus a guy
think
who's
he's
going to make
Yeah.
12.
Yeah.
I just mean, even if you're an Ayton defender, you're like, come on, man, Ayton can do way more things.
Okay, let me
All
pose
right,
that
but it's
question.
not night and day.
Right. Let me pose this question. Like, statistically, you look at a player like Mitch Robinson, and he's just a player that contributes to more wins, I think, on a team. But Ayton has the potential to be like this well-rounded 360-degree player who could play a little defense, can score in volume, and give you kind of all-star looks, potentiality. Mitch Robinson probably will never be that guy, right? He's just going to be a weirdo, hyper-efficient, affordable game changer. But Ayton's ceiling is maybe all NBA, and Mitch Robinson will never get there, right?
I don't think Ayton has the defensive chops to be all NBA, but he's getting better on that side of the ball.
Yeah.
And it depends on what the Suns use him for.
gonna be
I don't think it's a coincidence that his efficiency spiked and his scoring went down when they added Chris Paul. CP3's impact on specifically big guys like that, it's always,
Yeah.
a complete revolution in their efficiency. When he played with Nerlens was the second most efficient player in NBA history, right after Mitchell Robinson.
Tyson
So-
Chandler.
It's like when you look at Ayton and say, "Well, look how efficient he got." It's like, we also was playing with Chris Paul.
Totally.
Chris Paul spoon feeds big guys off of pick and rolls better than anybody in history. So if you take away the CP3 element, and you say, well, how much of this is Chris Paul generating that we saw his efficiency go from middle of the pack to like incredibly efficient? Not to get bogged down in like true shooting percentage, but couldn't you find someone else to do that for
Yeah,
maybe
totally.
not $35 million a year or whatever?
Yeah. And this is
I
why the
would say
cap
yes.
sucks. Yeah, to your point, this is why the cap sucks. Because he should just get the max, and the Suns have enough money for sure. But
And I want them to pay him. Yes, I'm like, by all means. I
Yeah.
think they should pay him the max.
Yeah.
Get your money.
this is a cruel salary cap result. And I'm sure James Jones is like, this sucks, man. I really like the kid. He's done everything he's promised to do. We drafted the right guy, in our opinion, maybe. But, like, under the cap rules, like, we see how he's played out in a couple seasons, 3 full seasons. Like, let's hold off for now. And he's going to be upset, and this sucks. But, like, as a business decision, we have to do it. And this is why I don't like the salary cap. This strategy is pointless. It doesn't make the game better. It's just like budgeting, which is what every NBA fan loves to do.
It's the most fun you can do. Budget. Well, we did it. We got to the opening of the NBA season.
Wow.
What a long, strange road it's been since a couple months ago.
Will the Knicks lose a game this year?
No.
We heard it here first.
Tune in next week to hear about their first loss on the next Perfect Pod for Cookies. Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.